Sometimes we'll find their bodies and they're brutally murdered. I mean, it's kind of what you see on TV, but that's real life in that world. If you think it's not going on in your neighborhood, you are absolutely naive.
The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Welcome to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by First Form Supplements. Go get your First Form supplements at firstform.com/borderland. My next guest is Sheriff Bianco out of Riverside County. He's been there for quite a while and seen everything when it comes to drug trafficking and human trafficking, and we get to talk about it. Sheriff, thanks for coming to the show. We really appreciate having you.
Absolutely.
Would you mind for the audience giving a brief kind of background and bio of yourself?
Absolutely. I'm currently the Riverside County Sheriff in Southern California. We're a pretty large agency, fourth largest in the country for sheriffs as far as sheriffs go, second largest in California. I've been in law enforcement for 32 years. I was elected the sheriff of Riverside County in 2018, again in 2022. My current election is not up again until 2028, so we're a little bit 2/3 of the way done. It's been a great career. I've absolutely loved it here. Good agency. We're not considered we're not on the border, but we're considered a border county because just of where we are. And we've got 2 border checkpoints in our county. Actually, it's a little odd, but they work well, and we work good with them together. It's been a good career getting to know them and how the agencies work together. And things are going well here. We've made a lot of substantial changes with me as the sheriff on how we patrol, how we conduct business in Riverside County. We have seriously increased the size of our special teams, whether it's human trafficking, drugs. Those teams have been heavily increased. And then I will just mention those two. It's funny that you talk about human trafficking and you talk about drugs and you think they're 2 separate things, but we realized, especially the last several years, that they are not 2 separate things. They're the same. So it's been a great career. I'm happy to be here. I wouldn't do anything different. We're just going to keep making sure we try and get better every year.
Love it. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I played college baseball for Glendale Community College. And in 2001, we were in the Junior College World Series against Riverside Junior College, and we lost. And so when I hear Riverside, it's a little bit of a heartburn for me.
Oh, that's all right. On a brighter note, then we have some else in common. I played baseball at the University of Utah.
Oh, no way. That's awesome, man. We're going to have to talk offline more about that. Yeah. So a big question I have is Riverside County has become like a major hub for narcotics trafficking. And from your perspective, why is it that, it's known that the CJ&G and the Sinaloa cartel is kind of really uses that area? Is there some reason why Riverside is a hub for that? And what I imagine is probably because it's connected to so many other freeways. But in your opinion, what would you say?
That's it. It's a combination of 2 things. We're the county. We're very, very diverse geographically. So we have big cities. We have all of our big cities are surrounded by very rural areas. So we have that rural area with bigger properties, ranch properties, that's more attractive to somebody that's trying to hide. But we're right next to cities, big cities. We're only an hour away from Los Angeles, but you hit it right on the head. We are the hub of the 10 freeway and the 15 freeway where they intersect in our county. And so everything that you have coming across or leaving California on the 10 freeway or the 15 freeway all starts in Riverside County, and it comes up. You have the 5 freeway, you have the 15 freeway coming from San Diego, you have the 10 coming from Arizona, the side roads that come from really Mexicali. So you've got a major influx of roadways coming into the country, and then you have the 2 massive freeways that all start in my county, and then we're only a half hour away from the 5 to go north. So it's the freeway system mostly, but they can hide better here just because of the environment, the rural area environment, ranching environment that You know, even in the horse industry, we know they launder their money through horses. So it's almost just like a perfect storm here.
This episode is brought to you by First Form, a company that I've been proud to work with for over 11 years. I don't say this lightly. These guys aren't just about supplements. They're about building a community, holding you accountable, and helping people actually change their lives. Their products are top-notch, third-party tested, and designed to help you perform harder, recover faster, and feel your best. And if you haven't tried their protein sticks, well, you're missing out. They're great, packed with protein, convenient, and ridiculously good. Right now, they have an exclusive deal for Borderland listeners. Buy any First Form product and you'll get a free 5-pack of protein sticks with your order. Head to firstform.com/Borderland to claim your free pack while supplies last. Again, that's firstform.com/Borderland. Purchase any product and get a free 5-pack of protein sticks. Trust me, they're worth it. We've done a lot of shows on cattle and horses and everything else in that same conversation. Can you remember one of the first times it was probably mentioned in the Riverside area of cartel activity or some kind of identification to cartel?
As soon as I started working in the jail. So when I started working at the sheriff's office in 1989, I was assigned to corrections, and quickly I was assigned to classification. So I had to interview everybody. So we had to house people, where they would be the safest inside the jail. And so that was a massive introduction into not only the prison gang system with the Mexican Mafia, but also how they relate to the cartels and the gangs that are on the streets, how they have to operate within the confines of the cartels. And then once in a while, we knew we would get cartel members that were arrested for some type of massive drug trafficking case that we were told by the investigators that what cartel they belonged to. So it was kind of like for me, coming from a small town outside of California that had no idea about drug cartels. I was drinking by a fire hose, trying to learn all of this and the schools I went to and everything else. But then going straight to patrol, or after that, going to out to patrol, then you're interacting with it, and then you go out to calls where, you have to suspect. It's like, wait a minute, it doesn't look like any of these people are U.S. citizens. None of them speak English. They're all driving $100,000 trucks, and the property is amazing. Where is this money coming from? And then I got into narcotics. And I did undercover narcotics for a few years, and that was just okay. That the cartels control everything about our border. They control what's coming in, who's selling what, who's going to deliver what. And then that was really I think while I was involved in that is when I really realized the power, the control, and the influence that the cartels really did have.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think, for the audience, I'd love to hear what the current, situation with cartels on the ground, like what's that look like from the street view of the law enforcement, and in the current kind of like the current tempo of what's going on with today's society. Is this a daily thing now? Are the sheriffs involved? And, there's obviously drug smuggling happens every day, but what does it look like boots on ground when cartels involved in today's kind of time frame?
The amount of drugs, really. And when you're talking about today's time frame, 2026 is completely different than 2020 to 2024. The cartels actually, what we found in our narcotics investigation, and we were still working with Border Patrol and with our federal government partners, but we were being told that they were hands off on anything that had to do with the border. And then we were seeing a shift from the drug cartels that were shifting to human trafficking. And we were seeing more gang members that were coming across the border with drugs, smuggling drugs into the country and being responsible for the transportation and the distribution of those drugs. And the cartels were switching to humans. And so the human trafficking side was much bigger for them. But then when Trump came in, it was almost to the day. The border gets secured, and now we go backwards in time, and now it's the cartels taking over drugs again. It's harder for them for the human trafficking side, so now it's back to drugs. And it's for us, we kind of know where they are. It's hard getting people into them because now when you're dealing with the cartels, people just end up missing or dead. So it's not like, street drug enforcement where, somebody's going to get beat up if they think they're, if they're a rat, or if they're a narc working for the cops. If it's cartel involved, they just disappear. And sometimes we'll find their bodies and they're brutally murdered. I mean, it's kind of what you see on TV to some respect. And it's a different environment. It's something that for Americans, we don't actually believe exists, and we don't believe people actually act like that. We think it's just on TV, but that's real life in that world.
Hi, everybody. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Ghostbed. And today I'm actually sitting down with its founder, Mark Warner, to talk about the story behind their brand and why they're all in on all of us getting better sleep.
I've had 3 neck surgeries over the past 27 years. And so I couldn't find a pillow or mattress that worked for me. And so I ended up having to invent my own. I took great care in it so it would take care of my problems. And then I also sleep warm, so I invented a lot of cooling technologies and got a number of patents on that kind of technology. So that was the origin of the purpose. But I wanted to start it with my wife and then my kids as a family business. So my grandfather, after World War I, he started the Werner Company, which ultimately became Werner Ladder. And then my dad invented the aluminum ladder, the machines to make it, and then he invented the fiberglass ladder and fiberglass and the machines to make that. So I was reared in that environment of quality, engineering, inventing, all that kind of stuff. And I grew up in that. So when I was starting Ghostbed and making my own memory foam pillows and mattress, that was my kind of history, and allowed me to kind of really make a very quality product. And that's really how we got started. And we're all about high quality at an affordable price. So for all of our Ironclad viewers, we have a special offer. So you go to ghostbed.com/ironclad, and we're giving an extra 15% off, which is a really big discount on already low prices. To come to Ghostbed, take advantage of that special pricing with Ironclad, and enjoy a Ghostbed mattress and other products.
When the cartels kind of moved into human trafficking, that was during the kind of the Biden administration, when, illegal immigration was happening like crazy. And so then the cartel kind of shifted, like, hey, we can start making money off assisting in this kind of loophole, almost using it to their advantage. And then now that the Trump administration came in and kind of locked that down, boom, it's gone back to the drug side. So it's interesting how the cartel is so focused, like, I would say more business oriented, in the fact that they're like, what's going to make money for us now? Let's going to go ahead and transition to that. And like, that's the wild thing about the cartel. It's not just, drugs and violence. There's a business brain behind it, and how they can use commodities like human trafficking or even, like cattle and whatnot, like you said earlier. And so very interesting how they're able to kind of pivot and try and find a way to make money based on what our system and the loopholes in our own system. Speaking of that,
Yeah,
have you been able
and it's actually the types of drugs too. You go between marijuana, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and it is a business model. They don't want to get caught. They want to make as much money as possible, and they're constantly changing on what they're concentrating on getting in. They're constantly, I mean, there's obviously a drive, and there's a need for fentanyl, and they're obviously playing a part in South America with China getting all of that and being able to get it into the country. But when all of your effort goes to fentanyl, they just stop and they move over now to methamphetamine again, and then all of a sudden we're getting the shipments of massive amounts of methamphetamine, and then you start hitting that. For law enforcement, you can't concentrate on one thing. You have to be just as smart as they are, adapting on what the trends are and what they're bringing in, because they're adjusting on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's been fascinating to watch over the years, is how quick they can pivot. And in the law enforcement capacity, we are kind of more reactionary. And so we see their pivot, we try and make a counter pivot, but they're already pivoting again. So it's a crazy cat and mouse game, and
It is.
Riverside is a really interesting place. And I'm curious, has there been cases in the Riverside area where you've been able to help in dismantling maybe distribution centers? Like, is there warehouses that have been caught knowing that they're distribution locations, or even businesses that have kind of been a front for the cartel drug smuggling? Is that big out there?
Yes. So we've had several businesses that we've taken down that we know are part of the cartel. Another unique aspect in the drug trade, it's not It's not in silos. They are all over. And one of the failures of law enforcement was we operate in silos and we don't cooperate. So decades ago, we got over that, thank God, and we cooperate very well together. So because Riverside is that hub, not only do we have our investigators doing, I mean, we're taking care of our own county, but because everything is transitory and everything's about transportation and where it's coming, and you got houses that only deal with money, you've got houses that only deal with product, and a lot of it is here. So we have other agencies from all over Southern California, including the DEA or task forces or whatever it is, that are coming into Riverside for their investigation. So we have to work well with all of the other surrounding agencies because it's a big issue here. And so we do have those businesses. We have the stash houses for the drugs. We have the stash houses for that only deal in money. And it's a big, I mean, I hate to say it's a game, but it really is a narcotics game of us trying to find all of this and them trying to hide it all from us. And so we find the houses, we find all narcotics, we find all cash. Once in a while, you may find a small mixture of both, but not really. They do a good job of protecting their business.
Yeah, what I found interesting over the years is seeing how some people who assist in the business side of things don't see as their cartel or connected to cartel. They're just running that side of the business for the cartel, whether it be money laundering, whether it be transportation. Very interesting kind of side of it. And I imagine in the communities of Riverside, there's some people by proxy are connected to the cartel, but not necessarily cartel themselves. And that might be a challenge as well to see who's actually guilty of some nefarious actions and who is just kind of involved in the business side only.
Right. And that's big. I think that's how one of the appeals for our area is just we have a large immigrant population here. So it fits in there. They either family members or involved, or you get involved in, transportation, being a mule, or you get involved in just setting up something, and you may not, and you're exactly right. I think they probably in the back of their head, they know what they're doing, but they don't know who it is that they're dealing with. They don't know which cartel they're dealing with, but they suspect it's something big because how did I get this 100 pounds of methamphetamine? So it's when in the investigations that we're doing, they're very good at walling themselves off. So you get to a place and they're never gonna rat out who it is, but sometimes they would. And sometimes it's very obvious in the interviews that we're doing, or even in the surveillance that we're doing, it's walled off very well. And those people that may be doing the money transfer or the drug transfer, it's just, yeah, I'll get paid $1,000 to go do this for you, and that's all it is for them is $1,000 on a $1.5 million drug transfer, and they're trying to take care of their lives and provide for maybe wife and kids, and wife and kids have no idea what they're doing. It's a very well-run business. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it is, and it's something that in the law enforcement world you can't just say, oh yeah, we have a drug problem and we have a drug team. You have to have a massive effort of not only the resources to attack it, but the intel, because it is a big deal. It's a huge deal, and they are extremely good at what they do. And we've got to be better in finding it.
I guess there's not a surface level answer to this because of the fact that it goes really deep. It's like if you own a dry cleaning business, and if the cartel owns it and they hire someone to work there, is the person who's hired to work there guilty as well by association? Well, that's not fair to say. And so it's really intricate, like very well woven businesses that make it very challenging, and who's actually guilty and who's just kind of getting paid as an employee. It's interesting. I find it just to be so interesting. Every time I hear these stories, it's crazy. So Riverside County was thrust into the spotlight after the arrest of El Mencho's son-in-law, and in connection with obviously the CJ&G leadership. How was that? Were you there during that time? Was that did that kind of like create a big buzz around the area?
It kind of did. It was actually in a city inside Riverside County. So it was the actual intel, it was federal government, and it was dealing with the city. But because where it was, where it is. We obviously had a part in it. And it was an ancillary part, and it was basically just for if we need help, we need to call you. But we knew everything that was happening. We knew when it was going to go down. We knew how they were doing it, and we learned of just the them being involved, where they lived. I mean, and I'll tell you, that's a perfect example of you'd never know. I mean, the neighbors had no idea. They knew something was odd. They knew something, it just wasn't right, but they were nice. They talked to him all the time. Very, they looked like they were very wealthy businessmen. And it was shocking for us that somebody of that level was living right here in a very, very nice upscale part of Riverside. But then again, in the drug world, it's like, well, there you go.
Yeah, I thought that was the same. Like in Riverside County, one of the wealthy areas, very prominent cartel family essentially was living right there, which is that's mind blowing. And you imagine how many other major cities in especially California is that same exact thing going to happen or could happen?
Yeah, I think we realize, or we think about it all the time. We know it does. We know they like living large. They like living quiet. They're not going to go out and tell everybody they're drug dealers. They're going to come up with that business. We're restaurant owners or some type of business owners, and they're basically hiding in plain sight. And it was unique for us because it's about 15, 20 miles north of where we know they are, we know where they're operating, and we know the area that it's more prominent. And so it makes sense that they're close to their operation, but at the same time, they're living in one of the nicest homes around.
Anytime you have the cartel that's a heavy presence, you also have corruption. And we've seen it time and time again. When I used to work for the Border Patrol, we've seen law enforcement agents get caught in corruption. You see it all the time. And in recent history, in Riverside, there was a correctional officer, a deputy, Jorge Rocha, who pleaded guilty to transporting 104 pounds of fentanyl leaked to the Sinaloa cartel. Is that something that you guys have ran into a lot? You know how it goes is, law enforcement gets paid maybe $100K. They get offered $50K to do a job. They do it. And, they find themselves in hot water. Is this something you see often in the Riverside area?
No. And I am glad you brought that up, because as you started saying it, I was going to say, we even have them in our agency. And you're exactly right. I mean, we don't get paid a lot. I mean, nobody got in there here to be millionaires, but, and so that enticement of money, we've heard throughout California that there is, there are law enforcement officers that get caught up in, especially in the corrections side of it, that smuggling drugs or smuggling guns, or well, not guns. I don't think we've ever had a gun smuggled into a jail, but weapons, knives, shanks, drugs, cell phones. It's $15,000. If someone, we know that from an informant up north, we know that if a correctional officer smuggles a phone into a jail, they get paid $15,000 for that. So that can be very enticing to someone struggling for money or whatever it is. But our particular case, we haven't had any other than this guy. And this was an absolute shock. It was from an ancillary investigation that we came up with him, or we actually didn't. It was a task force that part of the task force, one of the members was involved in their agency was involved in something else. So it's like, hey, we think we have this information about a Riverside sheriff. You're on their task force. So now it comes to us and we start looking into it. And that was, I don't want to say it was a fault of law enforcement, because this particular kid had an absolute spotless background. He had a fantastic mom. The mom said glowing things about him. There was nothing bad in his background. There wasn't a dad in the picture. There was never a dad in the picture. And maybe that's what should have been the problem, is where's dad? But then we find out later that dad was cartel, and it's uncle that has now recruited the kid into the cartel. And we had absolutely no idea because it was ancillary. And then mom is like, yeah, we have nothing to do with that side of the family. And I didn't know they were communicating. And I mean, she was very, very upset as a mom, thank goodness. But that was something for us that it was just a massive shock, because there was nothing that we missed other than it was. And was it on purpose? I doubt it. That kid was very young when we hired him, so I don't think it could have been on purpose, but you never know. It might have been.
Yeah, that's something we've heard in the Border Patrol before. Agents that are loading up vehicles, they get caught, you start going into their background, there's some kind of connection by way of family member or whatnot to the cartel. And this happens all the time in law enforcement. You just never know when it's going to happen. And that's an interesting case right there. That's like a movie case, right? Where you didn't hear about it until all of a sudden you tripped up and found it. And then there you go, a corrupt agent. I worked in the corrections facility for 2 years as well. And so I do see... I've seen a lot of really good people somehow get fooled into bringing stuff in. And I don't know how it happens, but somehow, one thing leads to another, and they get the corrections officer convinced enough, or they have something on them, right? Or some kind of, holding some guilty thing over their head to get them to bring it in. That's something you see right in the corrections facilities, correct?
Yes. And it's something we have to watch for. We've got to watch for, we know that the stuff is getting into the jail. Is it getting in through the mail? Is it getting in through inmates? Is it getting in through people that get booked on purpose? Is it getting in through attorneys? There's all kinds of ways to get in, but we also have to recognize, is it getting in from our employees? And we have to be watching out for that stuff too. But I want to, I have a feeling that it's the majority of cops that probably watch your show, but we know as cops, all cops aren't bad. I mean, I have a perfect example of, we're talking about this kid that was a perfect background, and then he ends up being part of a cartel because of an uncle. And I have another perfect example of a female. I mean, she's high up in our department, and she grew up in the cartel, in the drug smuggling world. And as a young girl, she was like, oh my, this is illegal and wrong. And she has completely left her family. She is a very good cop. She's in integrity at the utmost. And she's very open about it. And she does a very good job of going into young environments and convincing them that just because when things are wrong, you don't have to do it just because it's your family or friends. Do the right thing, go the other way, and fight this because it's bad. So it's not, I mean, we hire all kinds. I mean, we're hiring from the human race, and you never know, what that person is. And you hire the perfect person, and then 10 years later, they get in financial problems or some other type of problem. And then they look for that easy money, and it's right there. And then they compromise their integrity.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. And by no means was I trying to say law enforcement is corrupt at all. What I mean is there's people that get put into those positions, and they make a bad choice that ends up sometimes snowballing out of control.
Absolutely. And we know from, you talk about businesses, that when they're laundering money through a business, they don't have to own the business, as long as they find the right person that's suffering in the right circumstance, that they'll take help from, somebody wants to help me and they're infusing money into my business and I'm getting paid a lot of money. It's like they'll look the other way because it's helping out their situation. And so they may not be a bad person in general. It's just they found themselves in circumstances that they were able to be taken advantage of by an organization that survives by really manipulating and taking advantage of people.
Yeah, absolutely. What we do at Ironclad doesn't happen by accident. It exists because a small number of brands choose to stand behind us. These are brands that believe in the same things we do: craftsmanship, independence, and building something real that lasts. Norwood Sawmills is one of those brands. They believe in the people behind the network, the builders, the landowners, the doers, and the craftsmen who value control over their work and pride in how it's done. That alignment matters to us, and it's why we're proud to stand with them. Norwood Sawmills designs portable sawmills that give you the ability to make your own lumber on your land, on your timeline, without sacrificing quality or performance. For over 30 years, they've been building equipment that's engineered to last and designed to grow with you, whether you're a serious DIY builder or a professional sawyer. If you care about quality, if you care about independence, and if you're considering investing in your land, your projects, your long-term capability, Norwood is worth your time. We encourage you to support the brands that support this network. To learn more, explore their portable sawmills and talk directly to their team at norwoodsawmills.com. You know, I'm very curious when there's cartel activity, does that translate to a lot more crime in the area? Does that translate to, a lot more violence in public safety issues? Or, is the cartel really keeping their areas pretty tight and they're just focusing on, if there is violence, it's between gangs, it's between cartels and whatnot?
It's extremely quiet. So the violence that we see is from local street gangs. We're not seeing major violence from cartels. When we see the major violence from cartels, it's a brutal murder. It's a body dump with dismemberment, and it's those types of send a message type things, and that's not common. They don't want to attract attention. They certainly, we are searching and searching and searching for these houses that they have here or the businesses that they have here. They're not out there broadcasting that, oh, look at us and this is where we're operating. They're trying to keep as quiet as possible because of the massive amount of money and drugs that's coming through here that they're funneling through. You have to think about it is a massive, massive organization that all of these people are getting paid. And if they're not successful every single day, somebody's missing out on a lot of money. And the higher up that misses out on the money, the more violence down below that you didn't take care of business. So we know that it happens, but it's not, they're not out committing crime. They're not out doing drive-by shootings. They're not out doing any of those things. They're trying to keep as relatively quiet as possible to keep law enforcement away from them and not know where they are.
Yeah, I think there's a massive misconception on who is an actual cartel and the definition of the cartel. And also on top of that, who is just a drug transporter mule and who's a gang member. And those are very different. If you use the term the right way, those are very different individuals. And the cartel is the higher individual level. And when you start saying gang violence, those are gang on gang. Those are small town people who probably buy drugs from the cartel so they can go and make their own money. And so it's really important for the audience to understand, like, we have to be very careful of how we label these individuals, who is cartel and who is just a gang or a drug dealer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for us, what we find is we're not coming across cartel members every single day. We're coming across people that work for the cartel or that are associated with the cartel, but working your way up till you actually hit cartel level. They've distanced themselves. And it's on purpose. It's so you can't get level to level and track it back to the top. There's a reason why, these people stay at the heads of these organizations for so long. They're shielded from law enforcement. They hide from us, sure, and we can get RICO cases and we can do those things and work up to them, but it isn't like it's easy. It's not like they're out bragging or they're out, telling everybody what they're doing. They are shielded with many, many levels in their organization. And the ones that we're dealing with predominantly are just the people that are making $500 on a deal or $1,000 to transport something. It's not the real cartel member that's organizing the whole thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the way when you first started doing corrections and how the street gangs have to kind of follow what the prison kind of gang ruling, right? Is that still a thing? When I was in prison guard as well, like the streets kind of were having kind of in control by the Mexican Mafia at the time when I was working. And the Mexican Mafia kind of made all the rules in the streets. You see it in TV shows as well. Is that still something that's very common here?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, all of the gangs operate really, and I guess it's just the environment they live in, separate from cartel. But they're eventually going to get caught and end up in prison. So it's the prison that is getting the drugs and the money into not only into the jails and the prisons, but also the family members of those people that are running those organizations. And it's the gangs that do that. If the gangs are not going to do that, eventually they're going to end up in jail and they're going to be taken care of when they get into jail and they get into prison. So the cartel is still, not the cartel, the prison gangs are still big. Mexican Mafia still rules in the South, and In the north, it's just a different version of it. But it's
the Nuestra Familia, right?
It's we still have to deal with it. What's that?
The Nuestra Familia, the northern.
Yes. Yeah, they're still in the north. And then the 13, I mean, you got the border. I think it's somewhere around Fresno, the center part of the state. That then now you're, the southern prison gangs. The Mexican Mafia is really in the south.
Have you, and again, this is kind of a side question, do you watch much TV, and is there any kind of show that you've watched like, man, this TV show is pretty accurate in the information that they kind of give to the world?
Yeah, we like watching crime dramas, my wife and I. There's once in a while, I mean, we haven't for a while, but there are certain shows that people tell us to watch, so we'll watch it. And there is, from my perspective, there's always a truth to it, but then you always have to make it a little bit better so people are watching on TV. And so there is always that truth to it. It's like, oh, well, I remember that, or I see that, or yes, that's how it actually works. But then you get the part that's like, well, it's going to make people watch next week too.
Yeah, the entertainment side of it as well has to kind of still have an appeal.
Yeah, but movies, and I mean, I tell my wife all the time, these movies and TV shows or series, they don't just come up with something on their own. There is a factual basis to start this movie, and then they make it entertaining. So, I mean, to do a documentary on the drug cartel, that would be entertainment for us, but nobody else is going to watch that. I mean, you've got to add drama to it to get people to keep watching back. And so I like them, but I also know that it's Hollywood too.
Yeah, it is old Hollywood. I spent a lot of time there. So the past decades, you've been working, trying to get the cartel, seeing everything that's going on in the Riverside. There's some like lessons learned on almost maybe new standard operating procedures that you guys really just have to kind of follow in the Riverside area when it comes to this? Is there, and I'm not asking to give away any kind of anything, but more of like lessons learned from your perspective as now the sheriff, of how you have to run things in Riverside and be very, like, I guess, more vigilant.
Yes, and it's effort. I know I was a very active cop. I was a very proactive deputy, and I was a very proactive supervisor. And when I was involved in the narcotic side, I know and completely understand that the majority of crime involves drugs in some level. You're either under the influence of drugs, or you're selling drugs, or it's drug violence, it's gang violence that deals with drugs, all of those things. So drugs is a major, major part of what law enforcement does. And if you deny that, you're not going to be successful in your mission of keeping people safe or having a safe community. And so when I took over as sheriff, law enforcement in general in the past, and I think we're getting very, very much better at it, is we operated only in silos. I mean, we had our clearinghouses and everything else, but nobody cooperated with each other. It's this is my investigation, and we're going to do it, and we want this big bust, and all of those things. And I think that we've changed that drastically. But for me, when I took over, I put way more effort into our narcotics investigations, our narcotics task force. We participate with everyone. We absolutely have to be on federal task force. We have to have them in our local task forces. We've got to have all of the surrounding agencies involved in it. And there can't be this, oh, it's Riverside doing that investigation. We have to include Orange County. We have to include San Diego. We have to have DEA. We have to have DHS. We have to have ICE. We have to have all of those other entities that are involved in this somehow. We've got to all cooperate, because if we're not, that's why we're not catching them, because they're working through our system because they know we don't cooperate. But if we're all cooperating and if we're all sharing information, then we learn more about the ancillary things that when you, as an investigator, you can put them all together and figure out how it's working. But if you don't know half of the pieces, then, I mean, you're just hit and miss on whether or not you're going to be successful. So I think that for us, we're a massive organization, and we've been able to put a lot of resources toward federal task forces. For us, we're one of the major players in HIDA. The Stone Garden grant that we get fighting drugs is just, I mean, that is from the federal government. When I talk to the federal government, every conversation is do not stop Stone Garden. We need our Stone Garden. And it's a way for us to help the federal government on their side. They can concentrate on certain things where we can put our resources into working on the human trafficking side and the narcotic side, because sometimes it does go hand in hand. And it has to be that cooperation level where we all have to be together on the same page, because if it's one against the other, or somebody trying to up someone else, or someone just wants credit for something, we fail.
Yeah, when egos get involved, we're not focusing on the work. I have a couple more questions. And one of the big ones you keep mentioning is human trafficking. Has there been a lot or a significant amount of human trafficking cases that you identified in Riverside? And as well as, are those connected to the cartel, or are those kind of a different entity altogether?
So yes to all of those questions. They're not different. At one point they were, and then the cartel found out they could make a lot of money from it. So it's unfortunately for the world, sex is the biggest industry, and human trafficking is turning out to be one of the worst parts of that. And so when people are, particularly girls, but it's boys too, are drugged and then used for sex and pimping them out, it's gangs that are involved in it. But in the last 4 years, with an open border, with all of the money that was being made, the cartels were making massive amounts of money. And the reports that we were getting is they were making more money off human smuggling than they were drug smuggling. So the drug smuggling was given to the gangs. We're taking over the human side, and it's switching back now. But that's another one of my things is I believe we should be protecting kids. And so the child sex stuff and the child abuse stuff, we absolutely have to have a big effort at that. And it was just interesting that those two worlds collided, that our drug world and our human trafficking world collided over the last several years. And we had to really put a different look at it, at who we were looking at and how we were investigating it, because we did find that it was cartel involved. And it's massive. We have a very large human trafficking team. We train other jurisdictions in the country on what we are finding here, what we are seeing here. And we have a unique spot in Riverside County because we don't have any blades here. There's no blades in Riverside County where they're actually pimping these girls out or these boys out, whatever the case may be. The blades are easy for law enforcement in Los Angeles or San Diego or these other places where they have these massive blades where these women are out and men being pimped out and sold, and all of the customers are going. That's an easy investigation for them. But it's also happening here where we don't have that. We don't allow that. So we have to figure out the underworld part on how they're making it happen here. And that involves the gangs, and it involves the cartels, and that ability they have to move things. And it's just a different environment, but they go hand in hand.
You said blades. What does that mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. A blade in human trafficking or prostitution, a blade is what you see on TV where the entire street is prostitutes walking the street and John's pulling up in their cars. And I mean, that's where the sex trade is happening. And so the naive people will say, oh, they're just prostitutes and they're doing it themselves. That's not what's happening. There's very, very few that are willingly prostituting themselves out. They're under the influence of drugs. They're being beaten off scene. Their money is truly, they're getting a fraction. They may be getting $100, $200 a day, while their pimp is getting $2,500, $4,000 a day. And it's gangs, it's individual pimps. But that's what you see on TV, where you see the girl with nothing on, basically walking down the street. That's considered it's called a blade just in the trafficking world. And I don't know why they call it a blade, but that's just what we refer to them. They refer it to it as a blade.
Okay. Interesting. I'd love for the audience to understand this. And I know it's probably not, an easy conversation, but when you say kids, can you tell me about a case that involved that that is 100% human trafficking of children in the Riverside area?
Oh yeah. I mean, we over the years we have found them here. We find kids that don't belong to families. We rescue these kids. It's very, very hard because they're very, very afraid. They've been smuggled across the border, put into a family, or I mean, if you, it's not a family. They've been put into an environment where they're being sold for sex. So you have that side of it. Then you have another side where people are online trying to groom a child, usually that has family problems, that has they're reaching out for someone to love them, and then they end up getting them. They load them up on drugs, and then for 4, 5, 6 days they are in a hotel room loaded on drugs with men, just one man right after the other. Some of these kids, 12 years old, 14 years old, telling us that they know they're having sex with 10 people a day, and it just goes on. They're forced drugs. It goes on for a week or 2 weeks, and then they get dropped off back at home. And sometimes they report it, sometimes they don't. It's a sick environment, that world. I'll tell you, it is so sick. We have to be very, very, very careful of the mental health of our investigators, because some of the things that they see, and their parents, and some of the things that they see that is happening to these kids, it is psychologically damaging. It is hard to hear and hard to know that people are doing that to kids. So we put a lot of effort in their psychological mental health well-being to make sure that we don't leave them there too long, that they aren't getting affected by this. It's a horrific industry that is massive.
Yeah, and it's not just in Riverside. People listening to this have to know this is a nationwide issue. This is an issue that we are dealing with in every major city. And I hope we continue to focus on this and try and disrupt however the hell this is happening so much more now than ever. Man, thank you for sharing that. And it's just heartbreaking to even hear that something like that exists.
For people that are watching, the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, if you think it's not going on in your neighborhood, you are absolutely naive. And I hope that you have a law enforcement that knows it is, because it's in every neighborhood. It's in every community, every city. It doesn't matter if you're a small rural town or if you're downtown Los Angeles. There is some form of human trafficking and drug trafficking going on in your community. It's especially in Southern California that is really the hub, the distribution point for the rest of the country. It's being smuggled into California, people and drugs, and then we're the distribution point for the rest of the country. So it is happening here. We know that we're tracking deliveries all across the Midwest, all across the Eastern Seaboard. It's in big towns, it's in little towns, it's in big major cities. It makes it worse in big major cities just because of population centers, but it's all over.
My last question is there a trend that you're seeing currently right now in the cartel, drug smuggling, human trafficking space that is probably the biggest focus for the Riverside County to kind of address and stop?
Yeah, it's we're hoping that it's not going to be a trend, but it's something that we're seeing right now, and everybody's, we're shaking our heads saying, holy cow, we're going back in time. We're going back, or right now we are finding massive meth labs, and we haven't had meth labs for 20 years. And the drugs were all being smuggled across the country. It was making it too difficult to smuggle or to make meth in the States. So they were having to make it in Mexico and smuggle it over. But we're finding now, we're going back to the Red P, drug labs, and all these different ways that they were making meth in the 90s and early 2000s is now coming back. And we're not 100% sure if it's because of the border. The border is now closed, and so it's harder to get those drugs across. So they're finding other ways to get the chemicals in and everything else. So now they're making it here again. And we're hoping that's not the trend, but that's something that we're finding right now, and we're having to battle. And we found it here, and unfortunately, because of our environment, our demographics, our geographics, the Inland Empire, they call it, which is Riverside County and San Bernardino County, we were labeled as the meth capital of the world. And it was because of our proximity to cities, but our very rural area. You could make meth in these rural areas and your neighbors weren't smelling it. And they weren't, noticing the shipments coming in or the big things going out and the bottles and the glassware and all those crazy things. And so we're hoping that it's not coming back. We don't want that to happen again. And we're having to put a little bit of effort into trying to figure it out, getting informants in or trying to get our UCs in to figure out what's happening. But we went 20 years without a lab. And now we're getting them big ones, not little stovetop ones. We're getting big meth labs. So it's just they're adjusting, and now we're going to have to adjust with them to stop it.
Man, crazy to hear that. Well, Sheriff, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I mean, it's a great interview, and good luck out there in Riverside and trying to slow down everything that's going on over there.
Oh, absolutely. We're not giving up. That's our goal. Every day you got to do better than you did the day before.
Thank you for listening to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by First Form. Go get your First Form supplements at firstform.com/borderland. See you later.